Hey everybody, Nick Espinosa, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week. Though, truth be told, I'm actually recording this on Saturday afternoon due to travel on Sunday, and so there you go. If something major happens after I recorded this, I obviously will get it next week. But it's breaches of the week. Let's get started, and as always, I'd like to start by thanking the people that sent me a lot of these, and that would be Barrett Peterson, Jason Dance, and Chris Fallon. Guys, thank you very much. And if you have a tip for me, please send it my way, and I will give you a shout out here and also on my nationally syndicated radio show. And with that, let's dive in and start with a whole bunch of different updates from a whole bunch of different breaches. First things first, I talked about last week was Illuminate Education had a data breach, and I predicted that essentially school districts were going to have to start declaring, and sure enough, here we are a week later. This week, it's Douglas County, Colorado, Pueblo County, Colorado, and the New York public school system, 500 schools, 2 million students. This is going to be a big one, and those are the schools that are declaring for Illuminate Education. And if your district uses it, at some point, probably going to be talking about you. Moving on, let's give you an update on the Rhode Island Public Transit Authority, or RIPTA, update. It's now confirmed that Conti was the attacker, and this affected officially 22,000 Rhode Islanders. Once we have more, I'll let you know. Here's another one, Capture RX, another massive data breach that basically happened in 2021, early in 2021. Here's an update. A federal judge in West Virginia refused to kill a class action seeking to hold Walmart account for this data breach at its Walmart pharmacy, pharmacies, because basically its benefits manager, Capture RS, was there. The judge struck that down. Instead, they're basically giving the plaintiff a chance to clarify his allegations against Walmart. As I mentioned, in February of 2021, Capture RX was hit. 25,000 Walmart pharmacy patients were exposed. Walmart uses Capture RS. Supply chain hit. Here we are. Somebody is seeking to hold Walmart accountable for Capture RX's data security. We'll see where that goes. Meaning, did Walmart do their due diligence? We're going to find out. Moving on, let's give you another update on California Pizza Kitchen. If you recall, they had a 2021 data breach. They are basically, or I should say the workers or employees and former employees advanced a class action settlement over the 2021 data breach that compromised the personally identifiable information of more than 100,000 current and former California Pizza Kitchen employees. When basically they've asked a California federal court to approve the deal, and essentially that deal went through. So California Pizza Kitchen has decided to settle the class action suit with its former employees, and each class member will get $100. So womp womp. There you go. Heads up, if you are a former or current California Pizza Kitchen employee, you are entitled to just a little bit of compensation. Your lawyers got a ton. Moving on. I want to give you an update on Dial America. This is a marketing firm. Dial America Marketing was hit with a proposed class action over claims that the for-profit call center failed to safeguard employee information, leading to a data breach which compromised their sensitive information. Now, Alan Moore sued Dial America this past Tuesday, alleging that his full name, address, social security, and employment ID numbers were exposed in a 2021 breach. Moore claims that Dial America did not notice the breach for 6 months and didn't notify employees that their information had been hacked until 9 months after the breach was discovered. Obviously, that's an issue. I'll keep you updated there. We've got another update for you on American Financial Resources. They got hit in December of 2021. They allegedly failed to adequately safeguard private information, obviously leading to this breach. And so a class action lawsuit, once again, is being filed apparently on them. Essentially, what the breach says is that American Financial Resources learned of the data breach that took place between December 6th through the 20th of last year, in which an unauthorized actor gained access to basically customer data. The personal information compromised includes allegedly customers' name, social security numbers, and driver's license numbers. The mortgage lender failed in its obligation to keep this information private and confidential, according to the class action. So we will see what's going on. So if you used American Financial Resources, you may be entitled to compensation, hopefully more than California Pizza Kitchen. Moving on, let's give you an update again from the Oregon Department of Administrative Services. This week was full of updates, I'm telling you, although we have some new ones as well. Believe me, we've got new ones because we're going to go into those next. But the Oregon Department of Administrative Services And here's what's going on. Elena M. Martinez, basically a employee of the Oregon Department of Corrections, sued the Oregon Department of Administrative Services over the data release in Marion County Circuit Court last week. Now, this class action lawsuit alleges that state employees faced harassment and intimidation after the state inadvertently released their data. The state has not filed a response in court yet, at least as of that publication. I'm obviously keeping up to date on these things. A spokesperson for the DAS declined to comment on the lawsuit. Now, last year, the department publicly acknowledged that it inadvertently released vaccination statuses on state employees to basically the Oregonian or the OregonianLive.com, obviously a news publication in that state, and also as well as the Statesman Journal in Salem, Oregon as well. Now, by law, that information is supposed to be confidential. That's HIPAA compliant, and there you go. Those media outlets never published the vaccination status of individual employees, but obviously the leak happened, it got out, and here we are. And obviously in this contentious time of some people that think the vaccination is going to insert chips in your brain or something, obviously those people are very motivated not to like the others. So we'll see what happens. Moving on to a brand new breach. Finally, let's talk about the University of Essex in the United Kingdom. An email from an external partner of the college included personal information, and obviously that got out. A spreadsheet containing student IDs, dates of birth, and contact details was attached to the email on March 23rd. The university says that they're offering support of those affected. Now, this email from a facility management team was sent requesting payment for repairs to a broken door, and basically it included personal information. And here we are. Accidents happen. Human error is human error. Moving on, let's talk about Riviera Utility in the state of Alabama. 65,000 customers were informed this past weekend of a data breach at Riviera Utility, and information like names, social security numbers, driver's license numbers may have been compromised. It is being called a quote-unquote email breach, so it could be just a business email compromise scam or somebody got in to a mailbox. Moving on, let's talk about IKEA Canada. Now, IKEA Canada has revealed in an internal data breach, they've revealed an internal data breach impacting 95,000 Canadians. IKEA Canada said it was made aware that some of its customer personal information appeared in the results of a generic search made by an employee between March 1 and March 3rd. A spokesperson added that the information was accessed by a person using IKEA's customer database, meaning somebody got into IKEA's database in Canada and took a look around. As far as I know, this is isolated to IKEA Canada. IKEA, everywhere else from the United States to Sweden, apparently is okay. Moving on. Let's talk about Regional Eye Associates and Surgical Eye Center of Morgantown, both in West Virginia. They got hit by a third-party vendor. This apparently was on December 4th. Several databases were deleted, and that's the only thing I have right now. That's obviously coming to light. I'll keep you updated here if I get more information soon. Moving on, let's talk about the National Tertiary Education Union, or the NTEU in Australia. They got hit with a ransomware attack. Now, the union claimed that members' bank and credit card details may not have been accessible to attackers, citing heightened security measures in place to protect those things. Now, despite this, though, the union is making no assumptions. They're recommending their members change their passwords for their credit cards and online bank accounts ASAP. The Office of the Australian Information Commissioner has been notified, which is required by law, so we'll see what happens. So if you have anything to do with the National Tertiary Education Union down under, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about CG Insurance out of Bermuda. CG Insurance confirmed to the Royal Gazette, a publication in Bermuda, that an employee, quote, inadvertently and mistakenly shared information containing personal client data to third-party recipients, and that has since been reported to the regulators in Bermuda as required by their law. The company said that it became aware of this incident, which involves members of its wellness program, on April 6th. It did not disclose how many clients were involved, and I do not yet know how much information was stolen, but if you use CG Insurance in sunny Bermuda, heads up to you, you may have an issue. And finally, and we actually have a few finalies for you now, and this is, I think, is going to take more than a good chunk of time here. These are absolutely, I think, just rather interesting. The first one we're going to be talking about is health startup known as My Nurse. Now, as I mentioned, this is a health startup that provides chronic care management and remote patient monitoring services. They said they're going to shut down at the end of the month after reporting a data breach that exposed personal health information of its users. Now, the startup, which was launched as the Solusive Health, said that the breach notice filed with the California Attorney General's office per CCPA, basically it discovered this breach on March 7th during in which an unauthorized individual accessed protected health data in the company. Now, the data breach notice warned that patients' demographic information, health, financial information was accessed, names, birth dates, dates of birth, also medical history, diagnosis, treatment, lab test results, prescriptions, and health insurance information. Basically, if you're a patient of My Nurse and you breathed in their general direction, the attackers know it. Now, My Nurse said in the data breach notice that its decision to shutter its business, quote, is unrelated to the data security incident, but did not provide any other reason for the unexpected shutdown. Now, the company said it began notifying the affected patients on April 29, the same date, as the breach notification, and that's more than 7 weeks after the breach was discovered. Now, My Nurse co-founder and chief executive Walid Mohsen provided TechCrunch, where I'm getting this information from, with a short statement saying the company was considering, quote, how best to adjust our business model amid a changing healthcare landscape, but declined to answer any of our questions about the data breach, including why it took the company 7 weeks to notify affected patients, or if My Nurse had carried out a third-party security audit of its systems prior to the breach. Now, Mr. Mohsen also declined to say how many patients were affected in total. Under the law of California, though, where My Nurse is headquartered, they are required to basically say that if more than 500 people are affected. And so obviously there we go. We'll see what happens there. But this is not the first time we've seen, and startups come and go. And if basically this health tech startup was having issues to begin with, kind of spiraling the drain, if you will, these were the nails in the coffin. Data breach is reputation damaging. It's time and money consuming. It is a huge, huge problem. Spend a little bit more money, get yourself secure, and you're defending the engine of your economy. That is super, super important. And the next finally we have for you is India. Now, India is basically set to introduce a 6-hour data breach notification rule, which quite frankly I think is the most aggressive notification rule I've ever heard of in the entire world for data breaches. Now, organizations in India face a 6-hour data breach reporting deadline following the introduction of new rules by the country's computer emergency response team known as CERT India. Now, the new rules apply to critical parts of India's network and IT infrastructure, including service providers, data centers, government organizations, and corporations. The reporting window is much shorter than those in larger economies, like I mentioned, or large economies, I should say, because India's got a large economy. So, for example, in the EU, the GDPR mandates that breaches are reported within 72 hours or 3 days. Incidents can be reported by phone, fax, or email to India. Now, organizations covered by this rule must keep logs for at least 180 days after a cyber incident. Some sectors, including data centers, cloud service providers, and VPN operators, will also have to register and maintain certain information about customers, including names, IP addresses, the reasons for using the service for at least 5 years. Meaning, if you are attempting to be private in some way, shape, or form, the Indian government is now reaching in and essentially quashing remote privacy. So if you've got a VPN out of India, you definitely want to switch. I recommend one out of Switzerland. Now, similarly, cryptocurrency services will now be obliged to maintain a quote-unquote know your customer record, meaning you cannot anonymously sign up to basically trade in cryptocurrency in India any longer. So if you're using an Indian cryptocurrency platform, heads up to you. Also, CERT-In basically has issued a list of 20 types of incidents that organizations must basically include or must report on within the 6-hour window. So if you're one of these companies that has to report within 6 hours, some of those categories include malware, ransomware attacks, identity theft, spoofing, phishing attacks, and data breaches and data leaks. Now, here's the thing. With that, I'm very curious to know how phishing attacks are going to work, because we all get phishing emails. UPS says click here, blah, blah, blah. and we don't, right? We just go about our business. And so I think they mean successful phishing attack, because basically larger corporations get potentially millions and millions and millions of phishing attempts every single year. So I'm assuming they mean successful attack. I hope they clarify. Now, on top of this, the list also includes unauthorized access to social media accounts and attacks or suspicious activities affecting cloud computing services, the blockchain, robotics, additive additive manufacturing, 3D printing, or drones. So if you hack a drone, they've got a report. Now, all organizations covered by the directive must synchronize their systems to network time, basically maintained by India's National Informatics Center or the National Physical Laboratory, meaning the NTP servers in India now have to be synced to India's atomic clock, if you will, and there you go. So in other words, they want everything to be as synchronous as possible. They can't use, let's say, a time server here in the United States or anywhere else. You're now stuck with Indian time servers on top of this. Now, organizations that fail to comply must face penalties that are basically set out under India's IT Act in 2000. Announcing these new rules, India's Ministry of Electronics and IT stated that, quote, CERT-IN has identified certain gaps causing hindrance and incident analysis. They also added that the rules would, quote, and I quote, enhance overall cybersecurity posture and ensure safe and trusted internet in the country. Again, this is affecting a lot of the infrastructure providers. I don't think it's like the mom and pop coffee shop in Mumbai that's going to have to deal with a 6-hour breach notification, because obviously they're not critical to the internet infrastructure in the country. Now, R.V. Raghu, who is the director at the Versalist Consulting India and an ISACA ambassador in India, basically hailed this announcement as, quote, a great step towards improved data and customer protection, which can also strengthen the overall security posture of Indian enterprises. Reporting incidents can lead to the sharing of information, preventing the rise of systemic risks and leading to a stronger ecosystem. These new rules basically come into force 60 days after their announcement on April 28th, so the clock is ticking. Everybody's got 50-ish days left to basically comply to this. Some of it'll be easy, some of it may be difficult. The one thing I will say with this, though, is when you're looking at critical infrastructure and reporting rules, sometimes there are good and logical reasons to delay. And I will give you an example of Colonial Pipeline. In 2021, when Colonial Pipeline was hit, the pipeline itself was not actually hit. They hit the billing system. Colonial Pipeline could not figure out essentially how to bill their downline distributors for the gas, and so they shut the pipeline off basically as a precaution, because the pipeline wasn't hit at all. They just didn't know how to collect money. And so basically saddled with the decision of, okay, we can let the gas flow and figure this out later with our insurance company, because they have insurance, or we can shut the gas down and figure it out ourselves. They chose the national panic option and shut it down. Now, if basically the media hadn't got notice of this, hadn't gotten wind of this gas pipeline shutdown, we would not have seen a mad rush and run on gas. Even with the pipeline shut down, these gas stations had more than enough for regular traffic for the week. But because we heard about this, because one of the largest, if not the largest pipeline in the United States was shut down, everybody freaked out. Everybody tried to get gas on the eastern seaboard. We saw fist fights. We saw people basically filling up whatever they could, thinking this was like the apocalypse and the end of gas. And a few days later, the gas was shut back on and everybody just calmed down. That, I think, is a really good reason not to disclose data breaches if it's going to directly impact public safety. And so think about it in that way. If you have, let's say, a major ISP internet service provider in an area of, I guess Mumbai, let's say Mumbai again, that's the one I used before, and they have to declare publicly within 6 hours and everybody gets wind of that the internet's going down, people can freak out. We are panicky as humans. And so that's something that I think India should really consider, as should all the reporting agencies. There has to be exceptions to that rule, because if we are fully basically saying everybody's going to think the world is burning down, when quite frankly, it's not. So I think that's a huge thing. And another, finally, moving on from India, because I think that's an interesting one, we have to once again talk about the Pegas vulnerability. And this is actually super interesting. Now, here's what's going on. The Citizen Lab over at the University of Toronto recently discovered that phones of dozens of pro-independence supporters in Spain's Catalonia region were actually infected with the Pegasus spyware. Now, according to Gabriel Rufián, the leading member of a Catalan pro-independence party, Spain's top intelligence official, Paz Esteban, admitted during a closed-door meeting that Spain's National Intelligence Service, or CNI, had hacked into the cell phones of quote-unquote some of the targeted politicians, and that's according to Security Week, the publication. However, Mr. Esteban says that CNI had the required judicial authorization for their surveillance. Mr. Rufián stated, quote, "They, the CNI, admit to the spying, but say that it was carried out against far fewer people than those cited by Citizen Lab," obviously in Canada. Now, when the surveillance first came to light, the Catalan separatists suggested that CNI was likely behind this hacking. Spanish officials insisted that CNI is not authorized to tap phones without judicial authorization, but admitted that secrecy laws prevent the agency from confirming whether or not the CNI actually used the Pegasus infection. If you recall, that was basically a zero-click infection that was affecting iPhones worldwide, coming out of a company called NSO Group out of Israel. They've since been shuttered, and obviously Israel has now tightened their export restrictions to essentially more friendly countries, because that was a huge mess. Probably one of the worst mobile phone data breaches that we will ever see was Pegasus on Apple. Now, although CNI and Spain's ombudsman basically have said that they will investigate the hackings, Esteban Beltran, Amnesty International's Spanish director, said, quote, "This committee, characterized for its secrecy and obscurantism, cannot be considered the appropriate venue to investigate the alleged violence of human rights." Now, further complicating this matters, earlier this week, the Spanish government found that the cell phones of both Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez and the Defense Minister Margarita Robles were also infected with Pegasus last year as well. So, was the CNI actually literally spying on their own leadership? This is their equivalent, apparently, of the CIA and the NSA. Now, the revelations, have the Spanish people questioning just how widespread this spying is and who might be behind it. Citizen Lab senior researcher John Scott Railton stated, and I quote, "Being a victim does not preclude you from being a perpetrator when it comes to Pegasus," meaning if their prime minister and defense minister were on board with using Pegasus, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And finally, and this one will take 2 seconds, I want to quickly talk about the Supreme Court. If you've been paying attention to the news, the United States Supreme Court had what apparently is the first ever data breach of a leaked draft document, basically revealing how essentially the Supreme Court is looking like they're going to vote on Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade obviously is that 1973 law that basically came into effect banning abortion, or making abortion legal, not banning it. Now removing Roe v. Wade, which apparently is what the draft says, meaning the majority opinion appears to be with basically banning Roe v. Wade or overturning Roe v. Wade, abortion bans will come into effect in many states, as now the states can decide essentially how they're going to handle this. And many states have trigger laws in place, basically that say once Roe v. Wade is overturned within 30 days or so, basically a new law will come in, effectively banning abortion in whatever way. Now, I'm not adjudicating pro or con on abortion. I'm talking about the data privacy side of this. Yesterday, I did basically a video/podcast on the data privacy of essentially many different apps that are tracking women's health and how that could be used against them. Today, I'm talking specifically just about that court document. Now, Supreme Court Chief Justice Roberts has basically issued orders to the law enforcement wing, which is a very small wing of the Supreme Court. They have their own law enforcement, if you didn't know, to actually investigate to see who leaked this. And obviously, you will probably know faster than I will tell you on a Sunday if we ever determine who did. And obviously, there are many speculations on this. Is this actually true? Is this basically some kind of marketing thing to rile up one side or the other? Did a progressive activist release this, from a conservative judge? We have no idea. It's all speculation right now. And if we obviously come to a conclusion on this, you'll probably hear it faster than I will be able to bring it to you on, whatever Sunday I will be doing breaches of the week, but I will update you just in case you missed that. So there you go. Those were your breaches of the week. Obviously, just another bonkers week, a ton of updates. Pegasus is still around. Walmart is caught up in lawsuits. It's been a crazy week. Were you affected? Let's just say you were. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.